Hello, welcome to the Hooligans Research Project. Today we will be diving into the gaming addiction epidemic and how it is affecting young adults around the world. Our research project will include and further discuss the introduction, literature review, method, findings, analysis and results, and the discussion/conclusion of our project. The introduction. The purpose of the study is to determine what mental disabilities coincide with being addicted to video games. Video game addiction has increased within the last 10 years due to an increased exposure to technology. Furthermore, leading factors such as age, gender, and mental disabilities change the rate of addiction. The mental disabilities include and or are not limited to depression, ADHD, ADD, and OCD. The study is being conducted to raise awareness of video game addiction in young adults.
An addiction to video games, currently referred to as internet gaming disorder, is now being considered a mental disability. It has been suggested that playing online games in large quantities of time can significantly impair the player's day-to-day functioning. Research over the video game addiction suggests that there are at least two factors that may play an etiological role in the development of the addiction. Those factors include the motivated use of video games to satisfy needs and the symptoms of psychological distress. Studies done on the correlation between mental illness and video game addiction shows that using video games as a coping mechanism for distress can cause similar symptoms to those suffering with mental illnesses. Video games have become widely popular with today's youth because of their excitement and impulsivity. A correlation between ADHD and video game addiction has been found because of the impulsivity component that comes with having ADHD. Studies done on video game addiction and its relationship to ADHD show that children diagnosed with ADHD have a higher degree of addiction to video games. It has also been shown that addiction to video games is higher in children diagnosed with ADHD compared to those not diagnosed.
To collect data for our project, we created a survey using Google Forms and distributed a link to the survey on Snapchat and Discord. We obtained 79 responses to the survey. 8 responses had to be omitted. 4 participants were not within our age range. 3 participants submitted inappropriate responses, and 1 participant reported incorrect data. Of the participants with valid responses, 36 were male and 34 were female, and 1 was non-binary. Participants were asked various questions about their age, gender, possible mental disorders, and a variety of questions based around their gaming habits. The survey was open for 72 hours. Some of the questions were taken from a similar survey used online. Okay, so up next we have our procedures. In order to collect our data, we created a survey consisting of 15 questions. The survey was sent out through various platforms via link to receive as much data as possible. Once the sample size is large enough, the data collected from the survey is analyzed and compiled. After analyzing the data, the statistics were compiled in the following graphs and charts. The data represented through graphs is discussed and presented in the following PowerPoint format.
Okay, now we will go over the findings, analysis, and results of our survey. This is the age range of our participants. These are the mental disorders that our participants have been diagnosed with. These are the video game systems that our participants use. This is the amount of time that they spend playing video games, including hours a day and days a week. This is the amount of money they spend playing video games, including money spent on video games proper and the amount of money they spend on in-app purchases. This is how many participants skip meals or sleep to play video games. These charts show participants that have lied about how much time they spend playing video games or if they've ever lied just to play video games. This is how many hours of sleep our participants get on average per night. This is the time of day that our participants play video games the most. And this final chart shows how many participants have pushed away responsibilities. Okay, first we will compare these statistics based off of age. I put these into 2 different age ranges, 18 to 24 and 25 to 34. Based on the data, participants in the younger age range play for more hours per day and more days per week. The younger age range also gets less sleep than on average and skips sleep more often. And although both groups spend a comparable amount on video games themselves per month, the younger age range spends a lot more on in-app purchases. The younger age range also lies more playing video games, skips meals more often, and pushes away responsibility more often. This does really strongly indicate a possible correlation between video game addiction and age. Okay, now we will go over the addiction compared to gender. In this sense, we compared the male participants to the female participants. Males on average play only a few more hours per day than females, but they played several more days per week than females. Males tended to sleep more often than females, but they would also skip sleep to play video games more. Males also spent more on video games per month than females, and a lot more than females on in-app purchases. Males would also tend to lie more than females about playing video games, but both groups would have a comparable average number of participants who skip meals and push back responsibility. Based on the data received, there's again a possible correlation showing addiction based off of gender, but it is not nearly as strong as the age section was. And finally, we will compare addiction to the mental disorders that we tested for. When comparing the data, I divided these into 4 sets, into the ADD, ADHD set, the depression set, the OCD set, and the set that had no mental disorders in it. There were a few participants that had a combination of disorders, and they were compared individually. When comparing the amount of time that they spent playing video games, all groups spent a similar amount of time playing video games. They also had a similar number of average hours of sleep, and they also skipped sleep at about the same rate. Set 4, the group that did not have any mental disorders, and participants that had multiple disorders tended to spend more on video games per month, and individuals with multiple disorders spent significantly more on in-app purchases than any other set. The first set, the set with ADD or ADHD, tended to lie more about playing video games and push away responsibility more than the other sets, but all sets had a similar average number of people skipping meals to play video games. Based on the data received, it does not seem like there's a significant correlation between addiction to video games and the mental disorders that we surveyed about.
For our discussion and conclusion, in our results, we found a strong correlation between younger ages and possible addiction to video games. Due to our sample size of the older age range being minute, additional testing may be required. In regards to the participants, 50% had a mental disorder. These findings extend to previous studies which have shown that video games are popular among youth because of impulsivity. The impulsivity component of having ADHD is what attracts those who have the disorder to play video games. As well, it is shown that those who play excessive amount of video games use them as a coping strategy for their depression and anxiety. This complements our findings that shows that those who have been diagnosed with any of the mental illnesses asked, depression was of the most common. Furthermore, our results showed that video game addiction is negatively related to the motivation to study and/or do chores. This was displayed from 60.6% of the participants that answered yes to avoiding their studies. In relation to this problem, the Chinese government is the first country that treated internet addiction as a psychological disorder and put children in camps to help overcome this problem, thus proving the relationship between mental illness and video game addiction. In conclusion, this can enhance building blocks for future studies. Finally, these are our references, and thank you so much for listening to our presentation.